The right to own a firearm is simply put the law of the land. Guns are a loaded topic. They're an emotional topic for many of us. Should we be able to own weapons? Now, I may not be able to get you to change your mind if you won't look honestly and objectively at the facts. But facts are stubborn things, and I may leave a pebble in your shoe to make you just a little bit more uncomfortable if you choose to ignore these facts. Most of the key premises that I use come from gun-control.procon.org. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the Second Amendment. The law of the land says yes, common sense says yes, but California hasn't yet gotten the memo. California, with its draconian gun laws, thinks it's above the law. I ask you, can we trust California for anything when marijuana is illegal under federal law, yet California thinks that federal law doesn't apply? Heller, as I'll talk a little more later, is the law of the land concerning firearms. So anyone who disregards it is ignoring the Supreme Court. That's tyranny and the height of arrogance. Do we lock up poisons and close off electrical outlets to protect children? Then shouldn't we also lock up guns and ammunition for the same reasons? Of course we should, but we're human. I'm reminded of the adage, if the law is on your side, argue the law. If the facts are on your side, argue the facts. If neither are on your side, pound the table. While I may be animated, I don't need to pound the table. Fact. Bathtubs are more likely to cause accidental death than accidental gunshots. Now, this is according to the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Between 2006 and 2010, they did a study and they found that 303 children under the age of 5 drowned in bathtubs. Now, that's 303 too many. Now, the Center for Disease Control over the same time period, and remember, Center for Disease Control is no friend of gun owners, they found that there were 291 children under age 15 and 94 children under age 5 who died from accidental gunshots. So should we ban bathtubs since they're more dangerous than guns? Of course not. The problem was parents didn't oversee their children, probably in either instance. Why do people want to ban guns and gun ownership? Many people, I would say, are simply well-intentioned but ill-informed, and they fall prey to emotional arguments rather than legal arguments. We can all read the papers and see child deaths, mass shootings at schools, suicides, gangbangers, and other homicides. At best, the gun-grabbing politicians want to say they did something to solve a perceived problem. On its face, that sounds noble. At worst, however, they want a disarmed America that's easier to control. Think China with Mao Zedong, think Russia with Lenin, and think Germany with Hitler. What did those leaders have in common? They disarmed their people, and then they had complete control. Here's something to think about. Switzerland was relatively unscathed in World War II. Why, you might ask? Well, historians say because every Swiss man was armed and trained to shoot. Pretty much every family had a gun in their home. Some would even say many had machine guns. Kept Switzerland out of 2 world wars. I've heard it said that guns have only 2 enemies, Russ and politicians. I've also heard it said that a politician who isn't pro-gun, they're generally not very good on most other issues. However, if we're intellectually honest, we've seen that bans for alcohol didn't work. The 18th Amendment was appropriately repealed with the 21st Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. We should note that concerning alcohol, at least we could say that the correct process was used. Regardless of your view of alcohol, we had a ban, and then we undid the ban because we used the constitutional process to do so. There's no fiat. There's no edict. We followed the process. My challenge to the gun-grabbing crowd is if you really believe the arguments are on your side, then follow the constitutional process to repeal the Second Amendment, if you can get the votes. If we're intellectually honest, we would say that owning a firearm is a right to privacy issue. After all, one of the key points in Roe v. Wade was medical privacy. A woman had a right to privacy between her and her doctor. Now, if we believe in the Second Amendment, and if we believe in a right to privacy, then it's a no-brainer. a nationwide gun registry is simply unconstitutional. The Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects individual gun ownership. Contrary to what you might have read in your local paper, Heller is the law of the United States. The U.S. Supreme Court majority opinion syllabus stated, the Second Amendment protects an individual right to possess a firearm unconnected with service in a militia, and to use that arm for traditionally lawful purposes, such as self-defense within the home. I'd like to also point out that we have an individual right, not just a militia right, according to the McDonald versus City of Chicago decision. Gun control laws do not deter crime. Gun ownership deters crime. Now, the NRA would argue that there are many times that just brandishing a weapon is enough. And if we go to the United Kingdom, where handguns are essentially banned, they've actually not reduced the murder rate since the time of the ban. The year of the ban, there were 1.12 deaths per 100,000 people. That was the year that the ban went into effect. It actually increased that there were more murders, 1.23 per 100,000 people in 2010. Now, some say that the true numbers would be higher, but England doesn't want to admit that it made a mistake. So they're saying that not all murders are appropriately reported. Gun control laws infringe upon the right to self-defense, and they deny people a sense of safety. In our own class, we saw the movie Boycott. We saw that Martin Luther King, a person that fought using civil disobedience, when push came to shove, at least for a time, he had a handgun to protect his family. Was he wrong? Absolutely not. I ask you, what person coming in the middle of the night, breaking in, is going to do good to your family? Now, to those who say guns kill people, I say, let's have a gun sitting on the table and see it go kill somebody. No, people kill people, some intentionally and some unintentionally. Gun control laws, especially those that try to ban assault weapons, those infringe upon the right to own guns for hunting and sport. An assault weapon is not really an appropriate term, as the gun grabbers would argue that all guns can assault and kill. What is meant is a gun that has a magazine that holds 10 rounds or more. Now, we can ban assault weapons, and we can ban magazines and clips, and we can have the same success that we had banning drugs or alcohol. The only people who are going to turn in their assault weapons or clips, if there is such a ban, would be the law-abiding ones. And I say only some would turn those in because it's an unjust law. However, one could say that if not compensated for the firearm or clip, it's a form of theft, because taxes were paid on the firearm and clip in the first place. So if you're going to take someone's property, you should at least have the decency to pay for it. Gun control laws will not prevent criminals from obtaining guns or breaking laws. A new study from the University of Pittsburgh finds that nearly 8 in 10 gun crimes are committed with illegally possessed guns. And here's one, a headline. New evidence confirms what the gun rights advocates have said for a long time about crime. What the NRA has been saying all along, and that is this. Criminals, by definition, don't follow the law. So as a result, any new gun control laws will do nothing to prevent crime and make us safer. Gun control laws give way too much power to the government, and they could result in government tyranny, and the government at a worst case of taking away guns from its citizens. Here's a statistic. 65% see gun rights as a protection against government tyranny. Well, there's often wide partisan differences on gun-related issues. Even 54% of the Democrats agree with this. 75% of Republicans and 68% of independents said gun rights are a protection against government tyranny. Gun control laws such as background checks and microstamping are an invasion of privacy. I've already talked and given the example of Roe v. Wade. If there's a right to medical privacy under the U.S. Constitution, there is a right to privacy as far as owning a firearm. More gun control is unnecessary because relatively few people have been killed by guns. Now, there's 30 to 35,000 people that die by firearms in any given year, and that's out of 300 million people. That's 30 to 35,000 too many. But what about this statistic? As many as 780,000 die according to medical malpractice, adverse drug reactions, things that go bad once a patient leaves the hospital, and other medical-related problems. Let's say that it was only 78,000, just a tenth of the statistic that's floated. That's more than 2 times the amount of gun deaths, and yet nobody's looking to ban drugs, legal ones that is, or to ban doctors. Guns are simply a target for those that don't like them, but it doesn't mean there's that many deaths relative to the number of Americans. And when you look behind those 30 to 35,000 deaths, that includes probably about 10,000 homicides. It includes about 20,000 suicides, and then the rest are going to be unintentional and accidents. So if the suicides, if they had to find another means to kill themselves, they'd use drugs, or they'd hang themselves like Robin Williams. Now, one suicide's one too many, but people do have options other than firearms if they choose to go ahead and do that. Gun control laws and lower gun ownership rates, they're not going to prevent suicide. To all those who think they can go ahead and go to a gun range and rent a gun and kill themselves, think again. The range that I belong to will not rent a gun to just one person who's not a member. They operate under the theory that a person is not going to kill themselves in front of their friends. So if you're a member, you can go by yourself, but otherwise you'd have to go ahead and kill yourself in front of your friends. Most people aren't going to do that. So you're going to go ahead and legally buy the gun after they've waited 10 days and unfortunately take their own life. Now, more gun control isn't needed. Instead, what we need is more education about guns and gun safety. I bet you have never heard stop, don't touch, leave the area, and tell an adult. That's the NRA's Eddie Eagle program. But even that program is often discouraged in school because guns are just bad, at least according to those that run the schools. Gun control laws would prevent citizens from protecting itself from foreign invaders. I live in a border state, California, and police are not even allowed to ask about one's immigration status. So an illegal immigrant is clearly not loyal to the U.S. or our laws, so we need to go ahead and be prepared and to protect our homes and our families from those who are not loyal to America and would seek to harm us. Strict gun control laws do not work in Mexico, and they're not going to work in the United States. Look, most countries that have strict gun control laws, they're ripe for corruption and graft. A gun can be gotten for the right price and for the right bribe. The Second Amendment was intended to protect gun ownership of able-bodied men so that they could participate in the militia to keep the peace and defend the country if needed. Today, that would certainly include able-bodied women. Some would say that the National Guard is today's militia, but that's not really accurate, as the militia is a government organization, and one must ask, the National Guard is a government organization, and one must ask, if the government becomes the problem, then what? So far, gun control efforts have proven ineffective. Now, this was in response to school shootings. The Washington Post is one of the most liberal anti-gun newspapers, and yet Glenn Kessler, in 2015, he reluctantly conceded that all of the proposed gun control would have done absolutely nothing to stop mass shootings between 2012 and 2015. So, at best, much of this gun control is just feel-good nonsense. In conclusion, the right to own a gun is a right and not a privilege. It's a law of the land. The facts don't bear out that gun control creates any material society net good. And politicians, this is one of my favorites, those that pledge to uphold the U.S. Constitution. We just talked about Heller. In 1995, Senator Dianne Feinstein of California wrote, "If I could have gotten 51 votes in the Senate of the United States for an outright ban, picking up every one, bracket, assault weapons, close bracket, of them, Mr. and Mrs. America, turn them all in. I would have done it," Feinstein told Stahl. "I could not do that. The votes weren't there." This is from a lady that at the same time had a concealed weapons permit, which is all but impossible for the average citizen to get in California. So I thank you for looking that Heller is the law of the land, that the facts clearly support gun rights, and that politicians are often not our friends. Thank you.